Hello and welcome back to Infamous Indy. I'm your host, That Dead Girl, and if this is your first time joining me here, usually what I do is I sit down with you all and I will share a true crime story from my home state of Indiana, but sometimes I also like to switch it up a bit and talk about haunted places. So this week, we are talking about the Demon House of Gary, Indiana, and this is part 2 of that story. So basically, we kind of left off in the first video, giving a lot of background on the Ammons family and their experiences within the home. We talked a little bit about the kids and their erratic behavior, levitating over beds, climbing backwards up walls, speaking in voices that are definitely not their own, and exhibiting very violent behavior at times. And now in part 2, I kind of want to go over other people's experiences within the home, and we are going to be talking a lot about Zak Bagans and his role in all of this. So, as I said in the previous video, pretty much anybody who has ever come in contact with the home has some sort of experience to share. Captain Charles Austin of the Gary Police Department is no exception. Captain Charles was called to the home initially in March of 2012 in regards to a truancy case. Now, if you remember in the previous video, we did talk about how all of the things going on within the home during that time had begun to affect everybody in the home mentally and physically, causing the children to miss a lot of school. CPS then got involved, and that's where Captain Charles Austin comes into the story. So basically, Captain Charles Austin shows up at the home with 2 other officers, as well as Child Protective Services case manager Valerie Washington. And as per protocol, they actually do film these home visits. Upon entering the home, the first thing that Captain Charles notices is that there are candles, Bibles, and all types of other religious regalia all throughout the home. It's then that Valerie Washington, the CPS case manager, can be seen giving him a bit of background on her experiences at the hospital with a child walking backwards up the wall and all of that. So after spending about 45 minutes walking around and investigating in the home, Captain Charles Austin decides that they should go and check out the basement as well. He immediately notices that this basement is finished, all but one area underneath the stairs. Now, the area underneath the stairs, strangely enough, was simply a dirt floor, and this really piqued Captain Charles's interest. He said that upon first glance, he noticed that there were candles under the stairs as well as Bible. He said to him it seemed almost as if someone had been doing a ritual. The officers went on to experience a few other paranormal happenings during their time within the basement of the home. They claimed that doors within the basement would often open and close on their own. Audio recording captured by one of the officers actually even seemed to catch a voice whispering, "Hey." Captain Charles Austin also claimed that each time he visited the home, he experienced unexplained phenomena with his electronics. He claimed that his walkie-talkie would stop working, cell phones would stop working, and most notably, when he would go to leave the residence, the car radio would actually turn off and on by itself and seemingly began to change stations on its own as well. Captain Charles Austin believes that whatever is within the home affects women and children physically, but that it affects men mentally and electronically, which I kind of find that to be a little odd, but also pretty interesting. It's an interesting theory. In light of recent events, everyone involved kind of decided that it was in their best interest to call in a priest. And so a priest was brought in by the name of Father Maginot. Father Maginot goes to the home to begin his investigation. He is joined by Captain Charles Austin, as well as 2 other officers and a new Child Protective Services case manager, because Valerie Washington actually ended up resigning after what she experienced with the Ammons family. So Father Maginot begins his investigation, and basically what he's trying to do is prove or disprove possession. So there are several different tests and several different ways that one can determine whether or not someone has been possessed by a demonic entity. It's said that Latoya Ammons actually exhibited several signs of possession, including an aversion to holy objects. It said that she basically would go into convulsions when a cross was placed on her head. So while Father Maginot is conducting his investigation, Captain Charles Austin and the other officers, they began digging underneath the stairs. To me, it doesn't really seem like they found anything of value really, but it said that they found a pink press-on fingernail, a pair of women's panties, a child's sock, a red tin, burnt candles, and a few other random objects. But for whatever reason, Father Maginot actually believes that these objects are somehow tied to necromancy. And at this point, he thinks that, he has enough evidence, he's seen enough, so he contacts the archdiocese. And he basically is seeking approval to perform an exorcism. Father Maginot is then granted permission to perform a minor rite on Latoya Ammons. So I actually didn't know this, but when it comes to exorcisms, there are actually 2 different types. There is the minor rite, and then there is the major rite, with the major rite being reserved for the most extreme cases. So Father Maginot gets approval, and they begin the exorcism. So as he begins performing this minor rite on Latoya, it said that, all these strange things began to occur within the home. Apparently, during the exorcism, this strange oil-like substance began to appear on the blinds in the center bedroom of the home. The other officers that had accompanied Captain Charles, they became, very skeptical. They thought that Latoya's mother was somehow sneaking into the center bedroom and applying the oil herself while they were distracted with digging and the exorcism. So the officers decide to put a booby trap in place. Basically, what they did is they took a Q-tip and they placed it within the door so that if anybody were to come in or out, they would be able to tell because the Q-tip would no longer be there. So they leave their booby trap in place. They come back sometime later to find, the door undisturbed. So to them, that just kind of confirmed that everything that was happening during the exorcism was real shit, basically. The CPS case manager actually, begins to notice this substance dripping from the blinds, and she actually reaches her hand out and begins to touch it. It's said that she immediately fell ill and that all of the color left her hand entirely. Basically, her hand was just very white, like all the blood had left it. Father Maginot is said to also be affected by this strange oil once he touched it, and it's said that he became entranced and just kept repeating, "The blinds are dripping, the blinds are dripping." When all was said and done, basically the exorcism was said to be very successful. No one was hurt, no one died. So, I guess those are all positive things. Shortly after, the Ammons family moved to Indianapolis, and life seemed to all but go back to normal for them. So after all of the negative publicity that had been surrounding the house, obviously nobody wanted to live there. Who really wants to live in Gary, Indiana anyway? So the home was then placed up for sale. Enter Zak Bagans, who heard about the story from the media, and in 2014 he ended up purchasing the home for a mere $35,000. And of course, in true Zak Bagans fashion, he then brings in a crew and immediately begins to investigate the claims of demonic possession. He then begins filming a documentary entitled The Demon House, and if you have not seen it, I highly recommend it. It's very good, very informative. Yeah. Zak and his team would go on to, conduct a very thorough investigation with several witnesses that saw what had occurred, with the Ammons family. He actually tried to contact the Ammons family to get them to tell their story, but the Ammons family declined to be interviewed by Zak, stating that he had already been within the home and that they were actually afraid that the demonic entity had attached itself to him, so they didn't even want to see him or speak to him. It was actually later determined by Zak that they were already kind of entering into a contract with somebody else to tell their story. And I do want to touch on a lot of experiences that Zak Bagans himself had while he was within the home. Now, I wouldn't call myself like a diehard true fan of his or anything like that, but the research that he's done with this Demon House case is unmatched. And a lot of weird and unexplainable shit happened while he was filming this Demon House documentary. So in the beginning, Zak actually reaches out to try to find, different people who've lived in the home throughout the years. He actually contacts a former resident of the home named Mika. She initially claimed that, she didn't really recall having any strange incidents occur while she lived within the home. She just remembered that she always had an aversion to the basement. Mika would later go on to reveal that she actually had a lot of prophetic dreams during her time living in the demon house. She would have these dreams and she would tell her family and her friends about it, but they mostly just ignored what she was saying. She said she often had dreams about her brother and that something tragic was going to happen to him. Now, strangely enough, Mika's brother actually lived in the back bedroom of the basement, which is where a lot of the paranormal activity was known to occur. And in the end, Mika's dreams sadly came true, and her brother was actually shot and killed. And she strongly believes that whatever energy is within that home played a part in it. Now, during her interview with Zak, her 3 children were also present. They're all, inside the home, basically talking to him, asking questions. When some of the children start to exhibit, I would say, a little bit of strange behavior, but nothing too worrisome. On February 20th, 2014, just 2 days after their interview with Zak Bagans, Mika's daughter Erica actually attempts suicide by taking medication and stabbing herself. Erica claims to have heard voices in her head telling her that she was worthless and that she should end her own life. Now, if you remember, that's a lot like what was going on with LaToya Ammon's daughter. She also heard voices in her head telling her to do terrible things. Everyone in Erica's family who was present during her attempt claims that whatever was there in the house with them that day was not her. It's also said that Erica's wounds were, located on various parts of her body and that they strongly resembled stigmata. Erica claims that she doesn't even recall attempting suicide, nor does she remember being inside the demon house or speaking with Zak Bagans. And actually, Father Maginot, the priest who performed the exorcism on LaToya Ammons, performed a minor rite on Mika's daughter, Erica, as well after her suicide attempt. And this is kind of just the start of all of these occurrences and all of these things slowly starting to happen to everybody who sets foot within this home. And just 2 days after speaking with Zak Bagans on camera, Captain Charles Austin was shot while on duty. Was that just a weird coincidence, or did it have something to do with the fact that he was inside the demon house? One of Zak's friends actually reached out to the entity remotely to try to help Zak with the investigation. Just 3 months later, she would fall victim to a murder-suicide at the hands of her husband. Dr. Barry Teft was brought in by Zak to basically test the home for any geomagnetic anomalies or, like mold exposure, different things of that nature to kind of rule that out. And Dr. Barry Teft only spent a few hours within the home doing his tests, but shortly thereafter, he mysteriously fell ill. He went back to his hotel room, and all he remembers is that he fell and passed out, and when he awoke, he was bleeding from both of his ears. So he went to the hospital, and doctors couldn't find out what was going on with him because he was relatively in good health just a day before. And now his organs were beginning to fail one by one. Zak Bagans himself even suffered extensive permanent eye damage after barricading himself within the home. In fact, several of his crew members either fell ill or quit altogether. One crew member even claimed to become possessed by the demonic entity, which ended in him being fired from working on the documentary after he threatened Zak's life. I am going to put some pictures up too of a couple of other people that worked on this documentary with Zak and just all the crazy, insane shit that just happened to everybody involved. It seems as though tragedy just befalls anyone who dares step foot inside of the demon house. And after Zak concluded his investigation and finished filming the documentary, he decided to have the home demolished. And in January of 2016, he did just that. He ended up actually keeping the stairs that were located in the basement. Yeah, he ripped those out and he kept those, as well as a bucket of dirt from underneath the stairs. And I believe both of those items are now on display in his museum in Las Vegas. A lot of people claim that, what happened to the Ammons family just simply couldn't be true. A lot of people also claim that Zak Bagans is full of shit and that none of these things actually ever occurred. But in my personal opinion, I feel as though the evidence speaks for itself. Priests, doctors, police, psychiatrists, child protective service case managers, what do they have to gain from making up and going along with a story about demonic possession? I mean, come on. So with that being said, I do believe that what they reported was true. And I mean, basically we're just left with one question. Were all of these deaths, injuries, and accidents just all a strange coincidence? Or was there really a demonic entity or presence within the home who wreaked havoc on anyone who dared to set foot inside? And with that being said, I will let you, the viewer, be the judge of that. If you are interested in learning more about the Demon House, I implore you to check out Zak Bagans' documentary of the same title, The Demon House. It's very, very interesting stuff, and you'll get to kind of see those first-hand accounts of those stories. And I do know, I read that Netflix has actually purchased the rights to the Ammons family story, and they are planning to make a movie about the demon house and everything that happened to the Ammons family while they lived there. Thank you all for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed part 1 and 2 of the Demon House story. I plan to be doing a lot more of those Indy haunts cases for you guys this year, just because I know you guys love to hear them. I'm always working on new content to share with you guys. My next video will probably be on Valentine's Day. I'm doing a special piece on the Hollinsburg family murders, or as a lot of people from Indiana would know as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. So definitely be on the lookout for that on Valentine's Day. I've also got some stories about some cryptids that I've been working on as well. Just trying to add a little bit of flavor to the channel, if you will. If you are new to the channel, please be sure to like and subscribe. Also, go check us out on Facebook and Instagram as well. And as always, stay spooky, keep it creepy, watch your back out there because it's a crazy fucking world.